this issue about the endorsement of either John Cornyn or Ken Paxton. We're going to discuss the Tina Peters situation, maybe developments there. I want to start with Mike Davis. First, Mike, you hear because of the Supreme Court 9-0 decision, I want you to explain to me, but I do have a question. The Southern District down in Florida, I think, has impaneled a grand jury, a terrific young U.S. attorney down there. I continue to see John Brennan, the former CIA director, on TV nonstop bashing President Trump. Do you have any idea the timing of when that might be? We may not have to listen to that anymore because he's one of the true haters of the president.
Jason Redding Quinones is the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida. He's a good friend of mine. I recommended him to President Trump for the job. He is a bold and fearless warrior for the Constitution. He's a former federal prosecutor. He's in the military now as a colonel. He was a state judge. His family escaped political persecution from Cuba. So I think this hits him very personally when governments are politicized and weaponized against political enemies like we see in communist Cuba. I would say to Brennan, if you did nothing wrong, why are you so nervous? And lawyer up.
He's taking over. I take it the focus of that is some part of the weaponization of the deep state against the entire Trump administration. Is that generally what they're looking at?
Well, I don't know, Steve. I read the same news reports you do. I've seen the news reports where this grand jury has sent out a lot of subpoenas to a lot of these Democrats, bad actors who engaged in this unprecedented Republican lawfare against Trump, his aides like you and Peter Navarro, his allies, January 6th supporters, parents, Christians. I've come on your show countless times since the Mar-a-Lago raid talking about this weaponization, this lawfare. I have very publicly called for accountability for this. I would say retribution is a crucial component of justice. I very publicly push Jason Redding Quinones, my good friend, as the Miami U.S. Attorney. And I have very publicly said I hope that Jason puts all these asses in jail. So, of course, I don't know what the grand jury's doing because that would be illegal. But I am very happy with the news reports that I'm hearing.
Mike, talk to me about the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has essentially had President Trump's back. I actually think the tariff ruling was not as bad as people originally thought. I actually thought it was quite creative about how Scott Bessent and Jameson Greer, Ambassador Greer, and Peter Navarro can work with President Trump. And Scott Bessent announced today on Squawk Box that the 15%, I think it's the 122, is the 15% global tariff is going to kick in later this week. But the Supreme Court was it a 9-0 decision? We haven't had a lot of those. It was surprising. Can you walk us through it?
Yeah, it's a 9-0 decision, and it was by Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. So this is like a unicorn decision, and it's an important one. It's a Supreme Court decision that talks about how our immigration system handles claims of persecution, claims of torture by these illegal aliens who are coming to America. There was a Salvadorian citizen who fled to the United States with his wife and his minor child back in 2020, if I'm not mistaken. He had in his hometown back in El Salvador, he had got beaten up a few times. His brother got shot, but when this family moved to different parts of El Salvador, it was fine. It was mostly peaceful, as we say, with BLM. But he didn't face violence if he moved to other parts of El Salvador. It was only when he moved back to his hometown that he faced this hometown rivalry or whatever it was against his family. And so then, of course, like all these illegal immigrants do, they come to the United States illegally. So he came here. He gets caught and he claims asylum. He claims that if he gets sent back home, that he's going to be tortured. And you have federal immigration judges. Immigration judges work for the Justice Department. They're appointed by the Attorney General. They are executive branch officials, and that is intentionally set up by Congress, because immigration, the laws are written by Congress, but the enforcement is an executive branch function. And so this immigration judge said that this guy, his wife, and his kid didn't meet the standard for torture. Adios, Pablo, you're going back home, or whatever the hell his name is. And that decision was upheld on appeal through the Justice Department, through the Board of Immigration Appeals. And then from there, it goes to a federal court of appeals. It goes, in this case, the First Circuit. And the First Circuit, which is dominated by liberals, correctly held that this guy didn't meet the standard, and there is strong deference. There is substantial deference, very strong deference to the executive branch when they make these determinations related to immigration, related to torture, and asylum cases. And so the Supreme Court 9-0 upheld that. And this is important in this respect, Steve. It reaffirms that these decisions are not for these activist Democrats judges to make. You can't run to a federal district court judge in Boston or New York or LA or one of these other liberal hellholes and have one of these district court judges up in the process to free their illegals, right? It has to be through the process. And this was a 9-0 decision.
This is huge. Can you hang on for 1 second? Because I want to go through how they've been trying to jam up the deportation system by using this, a very important 9-0 decision by the Supreme Court. Mike Davis, the viceroy, on the other side.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
So, Mike, here's what I don't get. But this was the way that they were using, particularly the first line. As you know, the most radicals are the front line of the federal judiciary. Correct me if I'm wrong, but back a year ago, when President Trump, when we first started everything, not simply the border, but also ICE and immigration enforcement, this was a way that they were chop blocking us. And you're telling me the entire time the Supreme Court, it finally took time to get there, but the Supreme Court is united that this method can't be used in the future? Can we get him back up?
Sorry, Steve. The Supreme Court,
Yeah,
I'm
go
up
ahead.
in the mountain, so that
Go
covers.
ahead.
So the Supreme Court did not directly address the structure of the immigration system that broadly, but this was a 9-0 decision. Like that rarely happens. Justice Jackson, the most liberal of all of them, the most political and liberal of all of them, wrote this opinion for the majority, and there was no controversy around the fact that Congress writes our immigration laws, the executive branch enforces and adjudicates our immigration laws, both through ICE arresting these illegals, and then U.S. immigration judges who are executive branch Justice Department officials appointed by the Attorney General who decide these matters. This is immigration. This is separate from other matters we have before the federal courts. There are different due process concerns for illegal immigrants than for American citizens. American citizens have more due process. They have Article 3 due process. These illegal immigrants do not, right? They go through the U.S. immigration courts, and then it goes through the federal to the Bureau of Immigration Appeals, or whatever it's called. That's an executive branch court. And then it only goes to the Federal Court of Appeal after that, so the relevant geographic Federal Court of Appeal, after it's exhausted through the Justice Department system, and the courts of appeals give substantial deference to the findings of these immigration courts. So the idea that you're just going to come in here and illegally come into our country and get caught and then say, oh, I need asylum, I'm being persecuted back home because my drug dealer down the street is beating me up, that's not going to fly, right? And so it's very important for this 9-0 decision out of the Supreme Court.
Mike, thank you. One more thing real quickly. Up on Capitol Hill, they're running around about President Trump's Article 2 powers, either the War Powers Act or they want to bring guys up for testimony. Your thoughts right now, legally, with the authorization that President Trump has, does he have everything he needs? Will the Senate somehow try to step in here, or the House try to step in here in the War Powers Act? Or try to thwart his use as commander in chief and his Article 2 power, sir?
We talked about this right after the strikes. We went into this in detail, but no, the president has the full power as the commander in chief under Article 2 of the Constitution to fight back against the war that Iran has declared against the United States. You don't need to wait for a congressional declaration of war when you're already at war. If a foreign country has already declared war against the United States, we don't need a declaration of war from Congress. The president, as the commander in chief under Article 2, has to defend our country, has to repel attacks. And President Trump also has power under congressional authorizations going back, for example, to 2002 when Congress authorized the president to fight back against international terrorism. It related to Iraq, but it also related to the terrorist proxies in Iran, right? Iran declared a war against the United States 47 years ago. They've killed thousands of Americans since then, and the president does not need any authorization from Congress to fight back and crush Iran. And he does not. Look, we have not had a declaration of war since World War II. With the War Powers Act, every president, since that was enacted in 1973, every president for the last 54 years, whatever it's been, has said that War Powers Act is unconstitutional, and no president, Democrat or Republican, has ever complied with the War Powers Act. President Trump is on the most solid legal grounds, and there's no question if he is challenged in court, he's going to win.
Mike Davis, where do people go to Article 3, and where do they go to your always spicy Twitter feed? Article3project.org, article3project.org. Follow us on social media. Donate, but only what you can afford. And again, as we always say, the War Room Posse's superpower is action, action, action. So go to the action page. And thank you. The biggest action item right now is the SAVE Act. Light up both of your home state senators and your U.S. House rep. Tell them to pass the SAVE Act. We need to stop illegal aliens from voting and stealing elections in this country. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.